I used to kill people almost every day. I enjoyed it. On the days I didn't kill, I didn't feel well. Today, we will delve into the depths of a haunting narrative, a story that cast a veil of fear over an entire nation. Pedrinho Matador, in a simple English translation, would be something like Petey the Killer or Little Peter the Killer. This man was a confessed life-taker, admitting responsibility for more than 100 deaths, a gruesome account that includes unimaginable horror, the brutal murder and consumption of his own father's heart. To understand the origin of this nightmare, we enter Petey's childhood, marked by disturbing signs that foreshadowed the emergence of a sinister shadow. The seed of terror was planted even before his entry into this world. Violence wove the threads of the destiny of Pedro Rodriguez Filho while still in his mother's womb. This is the beginning of a story marked by blood and darkness, a tale that unfolds from the first breath, in the depths of a farm in Santa Rita do Sapucaí, in the southern state of Minas Gerais, Brazil, on the chilly 17th of June, 1954. The farm that witnessed his birth would also become the stage for the shadows that would shape the destiny of the man we will call Petey throughout the video. His father, Pedro Rodriguez, then a farmer, did not hesitate to include the newborn and his mother in the list of targets of his brutal assaults. Death has always been a constant and macabre presence in Petey's life since childhood. At the astonishing age of 9, he was already immersed in a sinister world. His grandfather, in a dehumanizing quest for survival, involved him in disturbing activities at a cattle slaughterhouse in Varginha, in the same region. In this slaughterhouse, where the lives of animals were brutally cut short, Petey not only witnessed the carnage, but also actively participated. Alongside his grandfather, they shared a macabre habit, the consumption of bovine blood. This was not a ritual or anything of the sort, just something shared between the two. In a shocking podcast interview, Petey revealed that the seed of evil sprouted early in his soul at the age of 13. A conflict with a cousin triggered an episode that would seal his dark fate. After an intense fight, he pushed the boy onto a sugarcane grinder. Petey, in a cold and remorseless confession, recounted that the altercation began when he, without permission, took his cousin's horse for a ride. Discovered the situation escalated quickly. After receiving a punch to the face, still at the tender age of 13, he threatened his cousin's life, unleashing a violent reaction from his cousin. The disturbing narrative continues with Petey guiding his cousin to the cane grinder, a place where he also worked alongside his grandfather. There, amidst the tranquility of the farm, he planned to extinguish his cousin's life. Without any remorse, Petey confessed that he believed the machinery would take the victim's life, which did not happen. Petey's chilling account reveals that when the machine jammed after he stuck his cousin's arm in, no feeling seemed to afflict his conscience. Faced with the machine's failure to take a life, he did not hesitate to resort to a machete, calmly beginning to cut his cousin with a frightening composure. However, apparently, his grandfather and some workers arrived at the scene, preventing him from completing his brutal act. However, his first act of murder did not take long to materialize. In Alfenas, in the same region, now in the year 1968, the macabre plot unfolded when his father was dismissed under suspicion of stealing supplies from a public school where he worked as a night watchman. The 14-year-old teenager, fueled by hatred and thirsting for revenge, grabbed a shotgun and shot the city's vice-mayor, who was directly implicated in his father's dismissal. Thus, the inaugural chapter of his bloody saga unfolded in Alfenas. The vice-mayor paid with his life for the alleged transgressions against Petey's father, and a ruthless killer emerged from the shadows. However, he did not think that death was enough. The insatiable hunger for revenge pushed Petey even deeper into the shadows. Upon learning of suspicions that another school watchman was the true thief, he did not hesitate. The following month, he stalked the victim and cut them down with deadly shots. The teenage murderer, determined to continue his trail of blood, acted once again. To evade the clutches of justice, Petey did not hesitate to flee to his godparents' house, seeking refuge in the winding alleys of a slum in Mogi das Cruzes, in the well-known state led him to the darkest corners of society. In the slum of Mogi das Cruzes, he found refuge among local drug dealers, unleashing his violence in the ruthless territorial conflicts of gangs. In this chaotic environment, where the streets were stained with spilled blood, Petey claims to have participated in murders, although his authorship remains unconfirmed. It was in this whirlwind of violence that Petey crossed paths with Botinha, a widowed drug dealer. By her side, he delved even deeper into drug trafficking activities, becoming an essential player in the intricate games of the gangs. In this scenario of constant danger, he did not hesitate to eliminate 3 former gang comrades, solidifying his reputation as a ruthless executor. At the height of his dangerous journey, Petey the Killer saw his ally, Botinha, meet a fatal fate during a police raid. However, he escaped unharmed, gaining even more notoriety among local drug dealers. With a reputation established as a killer, the young man garnered followers and established his own drug den in the depths of São Paulo. At the age of 17, amidst the violence and chaos of the underworld of drug trafficking, Petey found what he declared to be the great love of his life, Maria Aparecida Olimpia. The relationship ended in a tragic fate when Maria became pregnant, and the promise of a new life was brutally interrupted by China, a relentless rival who ordered the elimination of Petey's gang members. Maria, pregnant, fell victim to this brutal revenge, never getting to give birth. Petey the Killer and his accomplices launched a brutal assault. A few days after the personal tragedy, they mercilessly invaded a wedding ceremony where China and his gang were gathered. What followed was unrestrained violence, with no regard for any innocents present. With weapons in hand, Petey led the attack, ruthlessly claiming lives. The gunfire shattered the celebration, turning the wedding into a bloodbath. China, the architect of Petey's suffering, was fatally shot in the chest, marking the end of his life of crime. Immersed in his quest for retaliation, Petey found temporary refuge at relatives' homes, waiting for time to dissipate the focus of attention on this massacre. However, the murderous impulse consuming him knew no respite. In the family home, where the shadows of the past cast their cloak, a new macabre chapter unfolded. Petey's pregnant and helpless cousin revealed her dilemma. The father of the child refused to acknowledge paternity and marry. Faced with this sad tale of abandonment, Petey's response was once again written with the cold metal of his shotgun. Still at 17, he learned of his mother's death, a victim of the young man's father, who allegedly stabbed her 21 times with a knife. He also attempted to take the lives of the other children, who managed to escape to neighbors' houses. Petey then visited the father at the police station. He managed to enter with a machete and inflicted 22 blows on his parent, from whom he tore out the heart, chewed on it, and spat out a piece before successfully fleeing the scene. With so much attention focused on him, Petey was eventually arrested on May 24, 1973, at the age of 18. But imprisonment did not put an end to the killings, as he claimed to have killed 47 people, even while behind the walls of the prisons he passed through. Petey claimed to have killed 11 other inmates in his first year of imprisonment, earning him the chilling nickname Petey the Killer. Among the deaths he caused in prison, he reported decapitating a fellow inmate simply because he didn't like him. In a podcast, Petey mentioned killing people just because they didn't have a firm handshake, stating that such individuals were not trustworthy. In addition, he also took the life of 2 cellmates, one of them for snoring too loudly. Another, named Raimundau, known for extorting other inmates, was stabbed by Petey and his body was thrown into the elevator shaft of the prison facility. Quickly, Petey the Killer became infamous within the prison. Inmates feared him. An ambush was plotted by 5 other prisoners, but the killer retaliated with terrifying ferocity. 3 of the attackers were brutally killed under his fury, while the other 2 were driven away, injured. In the 1990s, hostilities with other inmates led Petey to be transferred to another city's prison, now in Taubaté. There, isolated from other inmates, he occupied a solitary cell, a way to protect the lives of fellow prisoners. Among the cold prison walls, he remained on the fringes of interaction with his peers until 2002. Even at that time, some inmates claimed he was the devil himself or allowed the being to possess his body. Despite claiming to have killed more than 100 people, authorities have, until now, attributed 71 homicides to Petey the Killer in convictions or investigations. Released since 2018, Petey the Killer, now 68 years old, claimed to have found God and renounced the violence that marked him for decades. His relatively tranquil address was situated between the cities of Baixada Santista in São Paulo, but his true refuge was in the humble alleys of Mogi das Cruzes. In front of his aunt and uncle's house on José Rodrigues da Costa Street in the Ponte Grande neighborhood, Petey the Killer ended his story in a violent and symbolic manner around 9:50 a.m. on a fateful Sunday. The investigation revealed a macabre scene where a black Volkswagen Gol with 3 men masked as Joker clowns emerged, interrupting a peaceful stroll with his cousin and her daughter. Screams and gunfire echoed in the alleys, while Petey the Killer, once the feared assassin, lay sprawled on the pavement, his body marked by multiple gunshot wounds and a deep cut in the neck, likely caused by a knife. Thus, in the alleys where 40 years ago he left a mark of blood, Petey the Killer met his end. A life that unfolded between the shadows of violence, the quest for redemption, and ultimately the last act of a bloody tragedy.